And anyway, he decided to go back to school to theological seminary because he had made friends with all these African American preachers. And so he became one himself, and he did a very good job of it. I read his sermons from time to time. It's like, you know, the Black Panther 10-point program cast in the prose of the Sermon on the Mount. It's really quite good.
Right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're
reminiscing.
A couple of other. We're reminiscing. Yeah. We're waiting for a couple more to show.
That's a song. Spending the hours reminiscing.
So Gary Zuckett's coming on this morning. He runs, he's the chief researcher for Citizen.
Don, why you give me this virus, Donnie? I don't like this virus, Donnie. Why you give me this? And fuck Christmas.
Hold on. So let's when Gary comes on, and he can only stay for about 15 minutes. All right, he's got another meeting coming up. He's a good researcher for Citizen Action in West Virginia.
Good.
Lobbyist, frequent lobbyist on progressive lobbyist in the state legislature.
I just saw our great Attorney General's commercial, Patrick Morrissey, how great he is. He's just spectacular, isn't he?
Right. Anyway,
Gary's a director. Gary's the director of the Citizens Action.
Right.
For a long time.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a long time, and a good guy.
That's exciting.
And then Ted Boettner's coming on also, who's got.
Come on, really?
Yeah, I gotta get his new gig right. Be the director of budget and policy, but now
Not anymore.
He's doing something else now, right?
Yeah, we gotta ask him how he's doing with his new job.
He's working with.
He's
Sean.
back on Twitter.
Yeah, he's working with Sean, right? O'Leary, I think.
Well, Sean's still at the Center for Budget and Policy, I think.
Well,
as far as I know.
Sean O'Leary. I mean, the one that went out to Seattle.
Oh, that's Sean O'Leary. Okay.
Playwright and.
That's good. That's a good
op-ed.
We might have been instrumental in introducing those guys.
I think so, because when Sean did his State of My State, he used to have very pithy editorials in the Charleston. Which paper did he write for? He was in the Gazette, and he used to have these really sharp editorials, and he wrote a whole book that really was a compilation of them called The State of My State. And he's a good playwright. And here we go.
Yeah, my wife has read a lot of his stuff.
He's good. He's really good.
Now we got Scott coming in this morning too. Oh, we're gonna have a good time. Okay.
Here comes Scott. All right, and here comes Ted. Good morning, Scott. Good morning, Ted.
Morning.
The new Zoom thing requires you to have a waiting room now. You can't let people in automatically. You got.
So that's why we were stuck in the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I used to enable it because I can't. You know, I'm ADD. I can't only see one part of the screen at a time, and unless I open up this window, man, it just gets.
I think.
John, that was very, very professional.
Anyway, we're waiting for Gary to come. Gary can only be on for about 15 minutes.
You have to pass some type of quiz to get through the room, you know?
You're right. Well, you can do passwords too, but I think.
Or like some kind of quiz though, like you have to quiz us on some type of esoteric socialist history.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Yeah, John and I were covering that.
Should a 4-ounce swallow carry a 3.5-pound coconut 8,000 miles?
The influence of Texas oil in the American left.
Yeah, right.
You might be surprised.
Ancient SDS conventions.
Oh God, you guys tell me.
All right. Well, we're gonna. Oh, here we go. Now we got people coming in. Doctor's in, and Randy is in. All right.
All right, Dr. John Aldis. Good morning.
Good morning.
I gotta get Randy.
John is he's filtering the waiting room right now.
Yeah, it's
all right.
I can't disable it. They won't let me disable it anymore. So.
Good morning to you, Randy.
Clearly, there's been hackers getting into the Zoom meetings of corporate boards. You know, that's what's happened. And, you know, hackers have gotten in and so they've demanded that Zoom, by the way, which has a lot of Chinese technology.
I was thinking of I was talking to a couple of women in one of our groups here in Beaver County. I was telling them about your show. They said, well, why don't we do that in Beaver County? We could do a Beaver County show. I said, well, I might invite you on to see how John runs it. So maybe next week I'll have a couple guests just to see how it's all about.
Coming on, Mike. She said she might be. Mike, are you there?
I'm here.
Is Patience coming on?
She may try. She's trying to, as I explained to you, she's trying to work things out with that, with our health insurance, and some situation has arisen with regards to Medicaid.
All right.
And that, so she's, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. She may come in for the last half hour. I have no idea.
Mike, I'm going to make you co-host. Just because, so if you happen to see people come in that I missed, can you just admit them?
Yeah, but you're giving an awful lot of power to somebody that's very irresponsible.
That's all right.
At least you're honest.
We're going to form the irresponsible political.
Powerful.
Okay, well, we got to get started. So hopefully Gary will come in. But if not, we have expert testimony.
Are you ready, John?
Ted, okay, on provocative. So, ready? Why don't you open the show for us, Mike?
And good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America. All the ships at sea, planes in the air, vehicles on the ground. We appreciate you tuning in to Talking Socialism, sponsored by Enlightened Radio, and our original dusty-footed philosopher and host, Mr. John Case, and his sexy, good-looking partner, J.B. Christensen. We won't hold the fact that he's a Yankees fan against him, although we can't stand the Yankees. I don't think anybody on this panel likes the Yankees, so screw you, J.B. All right. We appreciate all of our guests right now, Carl, Scott, Ted, John, Randy, thank you guys, and we appreciate our sponsors. That would be the Online University and MTV Solar. My name's Mike, and I just have a very, very loud mouth. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right. The topic I was going to open up this morning is full and I have a very short introduction to that, which is my wife worked for, after graduate school, the Levy Forecasting Institute up in Bard College. And the Levy Forecasting Institute was founded by a billionaire named Levy, but he was a big fan of Hyman Minsky, who is a sort of took John Maynard Keynes' remark about, it would be better if you just paid everybody to dig a hole and refill it again and dig a hole and refill it again. And Minsky had a lot of interesting, was a Keynesian for sure, but he had a particular view of this particular problem of full employment. And he basically had a thesis that said, you cannot get to full employment in a capitalist society without the government filling up, doing the public service.
Lawyer of last resort.
You can't. There is no other solution that will keep you safe from pandemics, depressions, the business cycle, the financial crisis cycles, and all that. And he had a theory that full employment through public service, like was instituted experimentally in the Roosevelt administration with the WPA, Conservation Corps, a lot of different projects that were launched. And they weren't implemented at full scale either, okay? Partly because they were opposed by the leadership of the American Federation of Labor. But nonetheless, I think that thesis that it's not possible to get there without a public service program that employs the unemployed. It has a great virtue is that at whatever wage you're paying in that form, in the public works form, that's the bottom wage in society, okay? You can't go below it because if you do, the government will hire you. now it creates a number of complicated, economic questions, which different economists have opinions on, but no one has refuted, I don't believe, the essential thesis that there's no other way to get to full employment. Now, when I ask that question, then I want to ask a second one to get you guys to comment, because in Jefferson County, for example, here in West Virginia, we had a huge controversy over the Development Authority, which in concert with the state invited, industrial corporation from Denmark, Rockwell, into the county. And the secrecy, the what do you call it? The opaqueness, of the process of, development, in a county or in an area or in a state, or for that matter, the whole country, creates all kinds of issues. And every now and then people say, well, gee, we ought to get progressive forces on the Development Authority, because even though you can't get to full employment except through public service, 75–80% of the economy is going to end up being private anyway. So private development is also a key issue in terms, on every dimension.
Hey,
Well,
John,
how do you explain
John, can I interrupt just
No.
for a second?
Not for a second. No, let me
It's a
finish.
technical issue, John.
What?
You have a sunspot hitting
On my
your face, and it's not reflecting well
There, it's the
into the camera.
Anyway, so the other
Better.
Thank you for it. I'll finish my thought here, which is
Sorry
that
about
you go to a development authority and you can get people on it, but what do they do? Because it turns out the development authorities sit there and the only business on the agenda is the next proposal incoming of we want to build ABC, and it's going to provide ABC jobs, and we don't want to pay taxes for 20 years in exchange. And the progressives or the liberals sit there and say they don't like it, but the problem is that the only business you can put on the agenda is actual proposals. Everything else gets scooted off. And so how to participate in the development process is an important part of full employment. So those are the two questions I put before you. You get elected, you want to go to the development board, what do you do? And two, how do you set up public service employment? Now we I'll just add one last thing is yesterday, the Bloomberg reported that you got 28,000 laid off at Disney. You have 9,000 laid off at Continental. You have about 9,000 laid off at Shell. You have, I forget, Amazon, not Amazon, but one of the 5 or 6 more, maybe 100,000 workers laid off.
Well, not only that, potential for 50,000 in the airline business.
Hold on, Mike.
Right?
And so we have a big problem where the full employment question is on the agenda. Now, Mike, go ahead. I'm done.
Sorry about that, but you still have that sunspot, by the way. I don't know where that's, but we got somebody, Tina's coming in, so I have to admit her. But yeah, I think I heard the numbers as high as 50,000 to 75,000 in the airline business that are going to get furloughed. So that's sad and upcoming. But I think in Amazon just reported they have 19,000 employees that tested positive.
Randy wrote a booklet for us on full employment. So he knows a little bit about this stuff.
Randy, you want to give us a start? Full employment. How do we get there?
Oh, you got to unmute, Randy.
Full employment. I think it'll help.
You're for it. How do you get there?
Those are forced, and that's all I have to say about that.
The first thing,
wages.
the first thing you have to do is, state, employment, public works are usually, organized on a state level or even lower county level. The problem is that the states can't print money. So what the first thing I'd have to tell the Development Authority to do is to go to the feds and to create a fund, and put so many billions of dollars in it that they can draw on, because they're able to do it. So without the federal government, expanding the currency to fund it, you know, the state and local authorities are limited as to what they can do.
John?
Who wants to go? Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. Well, in the midst of this discussion, there's tremendous pressure building all around the country, including in the labor movement. A bunch of unions have started setting up unemployed commissions, or whatever you want to call them. Central labor councils have. I'm trying to think. I think Wisconsin's one of them. I can't remember, but there are a bunch of. I don't have my notes in front of me, but there are a bunch of this. There's a bunch of this stuff going on already, and there's a bunch of unemployed organizing going on. There are groups around the country who are. Some of us remember. I'm sure Randy and John and others remember the Jobs or Income Now movement back in the late 70s. That kind of stuff is beginning to perk up all over the place. And I was on a call with about 20 people around the country who are not only getting with their unions to do it, they're going to central labor bodies and getting them to set up things. In Chicago, we're doing the same thing. So the thing is, I think we're discussing this when there's a huge movement already beginning to develop it. And one of the things that we need to do is figure out how we can help push that along and move more people into that movement, I think.
Here's one obstacle. You know, we're all for full employment, but to create new jobs, you also create new bosses. In other words, you have to, you know, when you're creating new jobs, you're creating firms. And the question is, well, what kind of firms are they going to be? Are they going to be capitalist firms or what? There is an option to create Mondragon-style worker-owned cooperatives, which I'm a big advocate of. I spent 10 years of my life in the Solidarity Economy Network out of the plant shutdowns movement advocating for them. But that's only one piece of it. So you're going to have to get the left to understand that if they want full employment, they're going to have to form a tactical alliance with a section of capital, a section of productive capital that's into creating new value, not just making money.
Let me ask, Randy, you still, you want to get in at this point? Not yet. Ted. Good morning,
That's
Ted.
great.
You know, so
Nope.
you've had a lot of experience with it.
Randy's an old poker player. He's keeping us
Yeah, I see that.
and close.
That dude's got a good hand.
I remember Ted even once, you know, saying that he thought that maybe the whole problem was the economic developers were the problem with economic development, which is, you know,
I just said if they all would actually just be entrepreneurs themselves, we'd be humming along.
So Ted, suppose Governor Justice tomorrow, in our esteemed coal baron, that's the governor of West Virginia.
Done did it.
Suppose he said tomorrow, I'm going to offer jobs to everybody who doesn't have one. It's going to involve $1 a day and 3 hots and a cot.
$1 a day, that's it?
Well, you know, I'm just going back to 1932. You can up it based whatever the 1930. That was the WPA wage, $1 a day, and you got 25 cents, and 75 cents went to your family. Okay, and
that's how my mother. That's why I am here. If it wasn't for that program, my grandfather doing that. I had 8 kids. I might not be here without that.
Now you can, inflation-wise, take the $1 a day up to whatever that would be today. But yeah, the basic idea. You had a bottom wage.
Yeah.
That was paid. Okay. And so open to anyone that was able-bodied. Okay. So that's the theory. And how much, I mean, you're going to get a lot of productive value, like Carl says. Let's suppose you have people doing at least productive work. You could raise couldn't you, the state, even though it can't print money, it could raise a bond, it could borrow, it can sell bonds, right? Mm-hmm. In theory, it could do it, right?
I mean, it could tax and do it. I don't see why. I mean, we're nowhere near our tax capacity as a state.
Okay. Well, that would be an interesting thing to define. What is tax capacity?
Or fiscal capacity. I mean, look at.
How would you go about measuring that? I mean, what do you look at when you try to decide that?
Well, what's the most effective? I mean, sort of like the studies they do with capital gains, like how high can you take personal income tax rates until you have a decreasing amount of income? Sort of like the the stupid napkin thing. Yeah, I mean, I think you could do that. I mean, I think one of the biggest, fairest critiques of the job guarantee, in my respect, is Minsky had a little bit of he was a very anti-welfare sort of reactionary in some ways.
Yeah.
So I think like the problem is there's a lot same with the basic income is you get a sect of people who are really wanting to push basically workfare, and what you're describing is almost like workfare. We can't have programs like that. They're called TANF. I mean, like you have to. You can get a check every month as long as you're looking for work and keep looking for work. And those programs have been pretty unsuccessful tying that to it. I mean, I think if you guarantee the job, I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but if it's more of a right and that it's more of a living wage, $12 an hour or something like that, that can provide a wage floor, almost like a minimum wage that increases private sector wages too, and that it's public and not part of the private sector, not just a job training subsidy, it can be far more effective in its impact. But I think, that has been the big critique of the job guarantee is, first of all, it's coming from, some folks that there's big disagreement with the MMT, Stephanie Kelton, Randall Wray,
Right.
Moser and those folks, I'm more of a Nordic, I'm more of a Nordic welfare state person where I think that's a better avenue than this. But I think the job guarantee could have a real positive effect. But I think politically in a state like West Virginia, it would go a long way to say, like, if you want a job, we can give you a job making a living wage so you can raise a family if you need to. I mean, I think that would go a long way. And I think at the federal level, you have to do it because they can print money. And doing that too, at the federal level, you also provide a much big tax boost to state and local governments at a time when they're fiscally constrained. So if you could create a Job Corps program, the CCC and the WPA had a huge impact in West Virginia. People still very much supportive of it. There's a federal bill to create a CCC that has Bob, I'm not sure it has Bob Parsons support, but pretty good support from a lot of folks. So there are things like that, but I think it'd be very hard to do at the state level. It's just hard when you don't, like you said, taking out bonds to do it could be difficult unless you tied the bond to like making energy efficient. I always thought like tying bonds to energy efficiency. Maybe John could talk about, JB could ask about that, because then if you're saving money on your energy bill, you can use part of that savings to pay back the bond. Some of those interesting things, but it seems to me to be much easier to do this at the federal level.
There's a trade union option too.
Yeah.
But for instance, in Quebec, the union there they follow what they call capital strategies. In other words, instead of taking all of their health and welfare funds and turning it over to Wall Street, putting in a Wall Street fund so the Wall Street people can speculate on your pension money, they create what a capital strategies fund. And they use that money one thing they used it to was to invest in the creation of childcare centers all across Quebec.
Oh, wow.
And so that put thousands and thousands of women to work, and it met the needs of the Quebec working class. And the startup money came from the union's pension funds.
What was that called again, Carl?
It's called capital strategies. It's trade unions have no capital strategy. They have all this capital and they just turn it over to some Wall Street investment fund to gamble with it. That's
I know.
I think Dr. Aldis had his hand up, unless he was just pointing his glasses someplace. But
no, just a question. This is way over. All this discussion is way over my head. But I do have one question. In a full employment program, how do you fire somebody?
You don't fire them. You find something else for them to do.
And if you can't find it because they just don't want to show up to work,
well,
then they don't get paid.
You don't. If you don't work, you don't eat.
That's right.
But you still get paid?
No.
Sorry.
No.
Socialism. You gotta work to eat. Unless you're infirm or something, or sick or something like that.
All right, Scott.
Scott has a comment.
Just back to my point again, I'm sorry. you know, all of us know praxis. And I think that's one of the most important things that we need to put into our discussion, is that if we're really going to fight for these things, we have to be involved in the movements that are going on right now, and we have to be a part of them. And I'll give you an example. In Illinois, there's a big, we have a big fight in this election for what's called a fair tax, which is basically a tax on the upper incomes. And that would produce a lot of money that could go into the coffers of some kind of unemployment program and stuff like that. But I just want to stress that I think all of us need to be amidst people who are making this fight and learning from them. Learning from the workers that we're talking to. And I tell you, the steelworkers in Mondragon, we've even started some plants back up as co-ops and stuff like that as a result of it. And that's a really important part of this too. But anyway, I just want to stress, we really need to be in the movements and getting feedback from the workers.
Mondragon is the left wing, is the left wing of it.
Tina
next, because she had her hand raised. And good morning, Tina.
Good morning. Sorry to be late. To walk it back a little bit, and also like in line with Scott's point, I agree that so the first thing we have to do, I get in these discussions because it's really good for me to hear the nuts and bolts of how the things would work. And as someone who's been leaning strong MMT lately, or for a while, it's also good to hear about the discussion about how the bonds would work and things. But before any of that can happen, of course, we have to build the political demand for it. Like once we have the political demand for it, then the politicians will figure out how to do it, you know, and if they have to, they'll figure out how to do it the same way they do it with the military budget. They'll just do it. So in line with that, in line with what Scott said about being in the movements that are doing it. So to lend a little local perspective on how to build that political demand, here where I live, the full employment program that the unions are pursuing right here in Beaver County are the cracker plant and gas drilling. So right now in Beaver County, I have although everybody has come together around electing Biden, there's a bit of a fracture in the movement because my labor progressives cannot be close to my environmentalist right now because they fight over the cracker plant, and that's been happening for a while. So I think that, and I'm always working to bring my more political progressives closer to labor. And then also, as I've said before, our congressional district was just changed and somewhat expanded. So now we have two fairly wealthy liberal suburbs from Pittsburgh in our congressional district. And because of that, I've gotten to know a lot of those nice white ladies really well. And they're doing a whole lot of work for Biden right now. So I'm really getting a chance to talk to them a lot. So what I will be doing is I will be moving the Green New Deal idea into the liberal circles to get them to think about, because they think about me out here in the lower working class as someone that needs helped. You know, they have ideas and they're used to being heard. So I need to find ways to make them think about labor in a more concrete way instead of like a vague, oh, those poor people out there that need jobs. So I will be talking to them about like concrete things about the Green New Deal. And that will also give me a chance to talk to them about unions. So the story I always tell about how to work with unions is that what I do over the years is I just go into our local labor council and I help with the get out the vote stuff. And then because the people who are usually doing most of the work are the progressives. So I get to know the labor progressives and I bring them a constituency as I bring my people in to do the get out the vote work for them or to stand picket lines with them. So it strengthens my support, strengthens the labor progressives. So, I mean, I guess like in concrete terms, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working to build a constituency for a jobs program that has to do with infrastructure and the Green New Deal. And then that way, whenever my labor progressives finally become disillusioned with this cracker plant, they will have a constituency to step into. There'll be people ready to listen to them.
But will they
have? Otherwise, I don't know how else to deal with this cracker plant is awful. It was permitted awfully. There's going to be bad things happening here with it. So I guess the only thing I can do right now is just prepare for that, and a jobs program that will address people's real needs when people start to see that that's not going to work.
What's the difference between a good job and a bad job?
Ability to unionize, the wages and benefits.
Safe.
And whether it's how much it's hurting your community. The balance of all those things. That's my equation.
Well, nobody I know ever went to work for a company. Well, maybe their relatives, the owner's relatives, but everybody goes there because they for the money. And people are. I think that there's a natural disagreement, a natural conflict between different kinds of class forces in certain kinds of coalitions. And it's true that, for someone has the income to be devoted to important social causes that they believe in is a little bit different kind, because you can choose the cause that most suits you and that you're most comfortable with, and that causes the least arguments with your family, maybe, or whatever. But then, for the person that's making, under the living wage, it's not the same situation. And it's, and I think even for people who are working at living wages, but in jobs where the production conditions are, they require, a lot of attention, a lot of hard work, that you can't, if you're going to do some social good that lays people off, you have to figure out a way to pay them or find something else for them to do, because otherwise you're going to be generating a division within the working people, and it won't be the working people that are deciding what happens next. It'll be those that take advantage of the divisions. So I put that forward. I think, for example, if you were going to go on a local development board, what would be your overriding principle that you would, weigh in on if you were a labor person? This is coming right before, this is going to come up before our Central Labor Council again here in Eastern Panhandle. Well, I always approach it with higher wages as first, because if you're not doing higher wages in a state where you have 25% whatever poverty, then you're not doing anything. That's going to amount to anything. So you can't sacrifice the high wages for some other social good, because otherwise you're going to be betting on poverty to get you to some social good, and there is no such path in my view.
The only problem with higher wages is you have to have a job to get them.
Well, that's true.
Could I say a couple things? I have to go pretty soon, but this is my book. So two things, with the state government. One of the things that can and should be done is the state should set up a public bank, model on the North Dakota State Bank, where all government funds are deposited in the bank, and the bank returns a profit to the state government. So the bank is actually a source of income and processes payments, writes the checks, instead of depositing your money in Citibank or Bank of America. And the North Dakota State Bank has returned a profit since its existence many, many, many years ago. And they provide low interest loans to business startups and homeowners and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you could put the question on the ballot. Would you like us to raise your taxes, or you want a state bank? Because it's really up to the state to do this. It's not federal. The other point I wanted to make was that in the late 40s, the labor movement was ramping up its campaign for the 6-hour workday. And there's a really good book called the 6-Hour Day, I think it's called. Yeah, the book is called Kellogg's 6-Hour Day. And Kellogg Company that, you know, makes cereal, guaranteed its workers a 6-hour day. And there was a tremendous amount of social activism, political involvement of workers, especially women who dominated the workforce at Kellogg. And so, you know, this became something that began to generate some steam. And I think it was in 51 that President Truman issued a National Security Council memorandum saying that the 6-hour day would allow Russia to overcome the United States, and we had to man up and work 8-hour days. So the 6-hour day is a national security question.
Yeah, and it was literally man up too. Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, you know, I think that, you know, those are practical things. And I think we should advocate, you know, for the 6-hour day and for state banks to help fund, you know, local. So I appreciate being here, but I've got to get off now because I have some other stuff to take care of.
Thank you, Randy.
Randy, thank you. And good morning, Gary.
Gary Zuckett is here. I thought he was going to come on early, but he's on.
Yeah, Randy.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Gary, we're talking about full employment and how to get there in West Virginia and or maybe the whole country. And I know you've been involved in citizen action with respect to the West Virginia State Legislature and government for a long time. And so you must know where the roadblocks are and, you know, the force needed to overwhelm them. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. It's been a while.
Right.
And I think the last time I was on your show, I was sitting right next to you in the studio.
I know we don't do that kind of thing anymore. We got thrown off the campus at one point, so it was a. But anyway, welcome to the discussion, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. Obviously, we're the latest layoff numbers and announcements from the news services. Indicate that we're not going to get the V-shaped recovery, and we have a serious challenge ahead of us with a lot of people that are going to be running out of work and benefits. What are your thoughts?
Oh, it's hard to figure out where to even start. Like you said, I mean, I'll be convening a call at 11 with an ad hoc group of nonprofits and labor groups called West Virginians United for Social and Economic Justice. And one of the topics we'll be taking up then is utility cutoffs, and how do we leverage the Public Service Commission to tell the utilities not to cut people off because they're out of work and can't, you know, they want to keep the lights on, want to keep the heat on. No, they have to keep the heat on going into the heating season, you know, so they can't cut people off and let them freeze, but they can sure as hell cut off their electricity. So yeah, where do we start on this? I mean,
if you were governor, where would you start?
Well, I almost think we need to start at the federal level with a $15 minimum wage. And we had a conversation with Senator Manchin about the COVID recovery issue way back in the middle of the summer when it looked like the Senate might actually do something. And that was one of the things that he shared with us, sort of off the cuff, saying, what we really need to do is work towards a $15 minimum wage in this country. And I about fell off my chair. But then the next sentence out of his mouth was that, well, and give employers some kind of tax break to help them bring that up. So
that's the Joe I know.
what comes out of, but we have, and at State House, again, things are totally controlled by the Republicans right now. We're hoping that may change. We may, be able to see a Senate. We know the Senate's going to have new leadership. We don't know who that is yet because Senator Carmichael lost his primary election to a teacher. That being said, I'm hearing that she's not a whole lot better than he would be, but at least she's a teacher and probably has a soft spot for education. So we know we're going to at least have new Senate leadership, and that'll shake things up. But
right.
The State House is a tough nut. I mean, John knows that. Ted knows that. They've both been up there stomping the halls, and JB and Ted Boettner. We just have to keep pushing. Obviously, the state bank is one of these no-brainer things that should have been a long time ago, and that we'll keep working on, as we see openings. But as far as employment, one of the things that at the federal level that, excuse me, I forgot to turn my office phone off. Have y'all heard of the Thrive agenda?
I've heard of it, but
Thrive is the sort of rebranding of the Green New Deal, and it's got really close to 100 members of Congress signed on to it at this point, and it is envisioned to be an economic development plan based on renewable energy and focused on bringing fence line and affected communities out of the mire of poverty. And it's very ambitious. It's like a 30-page resolution in Congress right now, and it's if we get a good outcome of this election, if we have an election, whatever the election results are, there's going to be a push at the federal level for something, for a big, bold plan to address climate, to address the economic disparities in this country, regardless of who's running the show. So.
John, I had a sorry.
Well, go ahead. JB had his hand up, but you wanted.
Oh no, I don't want to interrupt. JB, you go ahead, bud.
Well, I was going to say that here in Berkeley County, I'm on a couple of boards, and I used to be on the Development Authority. The Development Authority is made up of members that are appointed. They're appointed by various other government entities to fill a position, and they're large boards. There's like 20 people or more on there, and I think they get together and they hire a director, and they pay him, a really good salary, five figures on the upper end, to go out and find sectors that would be interested in relocating. And of course, here in Berkeley County, we're right on I-81. So we're very lucky to be located close to DC and Baltimore, and our price for commercial land is much cheaper than the areas that we compete against. So we were able to bring in Macy's and Procter and Gamble and a couple other Fortune 500 companies. And basically we held the rights to the land, and that's how the Development Authority got paid, was just selling lots basically and providing the infrastructure, you know, and the very complicated plans. And that did not happen, as far as I know, in Jefferson County, where you had a lot of double dealing, you know, under the table and fly-by-night permitting and stuff like that. You know, it's completely different from the way we do things here. But the other thing is, on the other board I'm on is the Solid Waste Authority. We're pretty much tasked with recycling and litter control. Those are our two main focuses, and we have really good recycling plan that doesn't cost the residents here anything, as long as they're willing to drop off the recyclables already cleaned and separated. We also have a curbside where the local hauler actually picks up commingled recycling, except for glass, no glass, and takes it, and the Solid Waste Authority benefits from that material. But the way we've created jobs is this litter control program, where we've been successful in getting these grants from West Virginia DEP and some other organizations, to where we can hire folks to come out on the weekends and pick up the streams that have been fouled by, you know, the weekend warriors, mostly beer cans. But we've found everything. We found tires and Coke machines and you name it. We find all kinds of things in the creek. But that's another way to handle a need, is to, you know, create a program where there's grant money, and then you hire people. You have to pay them well, because that's dangerous work, you know, being out on the water. And we've had very good success with that for several years now, and it's an ongoing program that we continue to win awards statewide by our success. So, you know, we have to identify the segments of society that need help. You know, people don't necessarily want to go out and pick up trash, you know, along the streets and along the waterways. But if you pay them $15 an hour, they said, I've got a boat and I'm ready to go. So I think that's important.
That's good work, man. And by the way, let me extend a good morning to James Boyd. Thanks for coming in, buddy.
So James, did you have the Larry Bish problem this morning?
No, I had all my security got stuck on the highway, and so I couldn't get across the bridge in time to get back over to New Jersey.
Okay.
So my entourage messed up. It wasn't my fault.
All right.
You know? And by the way, that thing about Larry, that's fake news.
It is fake news, you know.
That's fake news.
He doesn't really have to get out of a coffin every night. That's true.
Yeah. No, seriously, I do apologize. I was I was doing the honeydew list. Started 6:30 this morning, man. You guys gotta bail me out of this stuff. I shouldn't have said that. Are we? Yeah, we on Facebook. Well, yeah. That's fake news. I
have another question to ask you guys, because
okay.
Especially after listening to Gary shake his head about the the level of unemployment and what we can really maybe do about it. So some time ago, and Ted has more information on this than anybody probably, there was apparently a deal cooking with Chinese interests to invest, what was it? It was an amount, $83 billion. That was the number thrown around, which was bigger than the GDP of West Virginia, I think. And for various reasons, I assume the trade war and a number of other reasons, it fell apart. Also, as Ted pointed out one time, the investment in shale technology in the United States doesn't look quite as profitable as it once did, and certainly in coal does not look quite as profitable as it once did. So, but nonetheless, and I also have another source that told me that there was a huge interest by Facebook in building a backbone of fiber, you know, through helping fund it anyway, a backbone of fiber through West Virginia, and then thereby enabling some sort of network of virtual businesses and stuff to start up with very high bandwidth in remote localities. So I mean, so the question I'm going to ask is, do we need, are we like a little bit like, you know, Libya? I mean, we're an underdeveloped country that has some resources, but not a fully developed, you know, workforce that would, you know,
or brainstem.
So my question really is that do we need someone to come in and save us from the outside? Is there no internal solution? Do we need a China or a Facebook or someone like that to sell ourselves up to do something about our human capital, or do we? Is there an internal way for countries or states of the United States like us to raise ourselves up?
Well, we can raise ourselves up, but what you need is a political will. You have to elect Green New Deal majorities locally, statewide, and a Green New Deal majority in the Congress, and that's willing to take on our real industrial policy. The country needs an industrial policy, a green industrial policy. The problem is it already has one. It's called the military industrial policy. We produce the best weapons in the world, and 10 to 20% of our working class is tied into it. It's a social basis for militarism within the working class. So you're going to have to create one, you're going to have to infringe on the other. And that's going to take political will. You're going to have to elect a lot of AOCs and squads at every level. And then you get something done. Because you're not raising, it's not simply a question of economics, it's a question of politics when you're talking about full employment. And it's a political battle, and you have to win it not just by pressuring the existing political class into doing the right thing. You have to put our own people in the political class. You have to throw a bunch of them out and put a new bunch in. And we need a Green New Deal majority at every level of government to get what we need done. It can be done. I mean, China could. I mean, I would invite China to show us how to build high-speed rail, say from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and they would do an excellent job of it, and probably do it cheaper than the Americans could, even employing American labor at standard wage. But you know, there's politics involved in that. So, you know, we can do. You know, Roosevelt did the Tennessee Valley Authority, which created you know, all sorts of good things and some bad things, but he was attacked at the time by the manufacturers of the country. They called it his Red 5-year plan, and that as a socialist Red 5-year plan, it was the Tennessee Valley Authority. So you all know how that turned out. It created immense value. You know, it paid for itself many times over. So all of these things, you know, can be done, but we need the political will.
Another question that came up would be related to this is that if you had a full employment program, especially that could employ anyone, like the New Deal programs, it would empty 3/4 of the prisons.
That's right.
And
eliminate the cause of why many people go to prison in the first place, because they get hired in the underground economy. Just because the regular market doesn't give them a job doesn't mean they won't create them for themselves, selling dope and women.
Absolutely. I think James just attended an important discussion actually online that I didn't even unfortunately missed.
You were there in spirit.
From the prison community, the prisoner, formerly incarcerated people. Trying to get back into a real life in society. James, what messages came from that discussion?
That we need to call a thing. We need to begin to call racism for what it is. I mean, there needs to be a big sticker that pops up on people's heads when they, just like that robot that's detecting coronavirus. There needs to be something that gets people to understand that you're being racist at this particular time. Stop it. Just cut it out. But that's like my cartoonish description of, what I got away from that, because the conversations that we had the other night were very compelling, empowering, and enlightening. I'm juggling between having a dumb fist, which is the kind of fist that precedes my survival and is just fighting in a dumb way. But now I'm smart fist, so I'm juggling between that because, my emotional self wants to be really angry, but that's kind of the easy way out. And so the conversation around in the prisons. So to me, it was very uplifting what's going on in the country right now. I don't know if that makes any sense because I'm finding out that there are more people who are good than there are people who are just crazy and dangerous in this world, so back the way making America great again, John. I think you would probably be shocked with all the information that you're sharing with me. As a white man to a black man, it wasn't allowed. That was the conversations that we were having the other night. We need a new narrative because at one point it was, it was a Friday night gathering when black people were hung in the Times Square, and then other black families were made. They were made to come out and watch their family member get hung, and they were not allowed to take the body down until the people that gathered and got them hung decided in the city council, I guess let's call it the city council, that you guys can go out there and take your father down. He's hung there long, and then white people would come by and cut off souvenirs, fingers and toes. That's some shit we did in Vietnam. And so for me to suddenly be awakened by this tsunami of violence and degradation and everything cropping up again, and then I mix that with my past, and then you got a ticking time bomb, but it's a manageable time bomb because I'm not bad. I'm not crazy. I'm not this violent person, black man that's running around that's going to rape white women and pull them to the side. And I mean, that was a narrative that was, and it sounds almost like it's something out of Rod Serling to our young people. Our young people you sound like you're talking about the Twilight Zone. And so anyway, I could talk to you guys for 69 years.
I agree.
And so my question was, this is really what I got out of it. Like my white brothers and sisters, I just can't imagine how awkward you all must feel when you, especially with mixed marriages, people married and it's a good life, it's a good thing, but you got this history that a lot of the residue is still walking around, stateside. And that's what we're experiencing in this country. And, it's just, but it's a good thing to me that it's being highlighted and talked about. So,
I ran a job training program for ex-offenders and prisoners on work release for 5 years in Chicago. And I was having some success. Most programs, 2 out of 3 went back to jail. On my program, 1 out of 3 went back to jail. So one day, 3 big limousines pull up in front of where I'm teaching my class, and all these state troopers come out. And in walks the head of the Illinois Department of Corrections. He wanted to see what I was doing. So first I let the prisoners and ex-offenders give him a piece of their mind. So then he comes over to me. and asked me what I thought. I said, you know, here's the problem. I says, I got a successful pissant little program here. And I says, the great irony is, why do I have it? Why doesn't this program exist in every prison in the Illinois Department of Corrections? I said, the Constitution requires you to do restorative justice, but you don't. I said, you don't do any of this. You need one of these in every prison. So he got all tongue-tied and flabbergasted and said, I said, you have $1 billion budget. He said, oh, you know, I don't have control over it, blah, blah, blah. So he had no answer because he was saying that there was no political will for him to do the right thing. He knew what the right thing to do was, but there was no political will to make him do it.
What's the difference between forced labor and full employment?
You know, slavery was full employment in a way. You know, they did vagrancy laws in the South to make sure everybody had a job. And if you didn't, you went on the chain gang. The difference between, you know,
you got anybody off, John, but we're coming up on the top of the hour here, bud.
Just wondered if anybody else had I mean, the prison population itself is maybe one of the most powerful arguments. We incarcerate more people. I found this out because I was researching about the Uyghurs, you know, how repressed they were in China. And then I discovered that the United States has, you know, the highest incarceration rate in the world by orders of magnitude, you know. And I said, you know, well, you know, full employment of really of the kind that came forth in the disaster following the Great Depression, that with Roosevelt's innovative programs, there isn't any other. I mean,
I think the answer to whether it's forced labor, the answer to that, some of the answer to that are in the Roosevelt administration, New Deal administration. It depends on how many progressives we elect to Congress. You know, it depends on how big we make the squad as to whether it's forced labor or us implementing programs that we need.
I would say forced labor is when you have a choice not to do it. In other words, if you have an alternative job that's, you know, gives you better conditions, then you have a choice to leave. When you have a choice to leave, then then you have a certain degree of freedom.
Well, we don't want chain gangs, obviously, but
that's right.
On the other hand, I just think that if you had everybody that came out of prison, for example, that had a job that paid enough to pay the rent,
right,
and maybe participate in whatever program, you know, to try and get themselves re-educated or something like that.
I had an advocate.
It's not just paying the rent.
I had a plan for that, which I offered to some foundations. I said, look, a lot of these guys come out of prison, they have skills. You know, some of them even became millwrights. So they learn plumbing, they learn electricity, they learn carpentry, they learn things in prison. Some of them. And then I said, why not? I said, we have a whole bunch of empty houses that just need renovating. I said, why don't you let them move in? They can live in the house and then they can renovate it. And then when they got it up to scale, they can sell it and they make some money on it. I said, you can even bring in some union carpenters from the trade unions to teach them. You can form them into a worker co-op or a combination worker city co-op so that they own something. And when they finish one house, they move on to the next and just keep going and going and going until they renovate every house in the area. So they have a place to sleep, number one. They have an income coming in, number two. But you would be surprised at what prisoners need more than anything else. They need a bank account. You say, yeah, I had one guy work for me. I paid him $800. I said, go put it. He says, Mr. Davidson, nobody will give me a bank account because I'm an ex-offender. I said, what? I even took him over to my own bank where I wrote the check. They wouldn't open it up for him. So that, or give them a cell phone with voicemail. So that they can leave a phone number so that the employer can call them back and leave them a message.
All right. Unfortunately, John, we're here at the top of the hour.
You're right. Well, Carl will have gotten the last word today. Okay.
Very good.
Okay. thank everyone. Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to say on behalf of Enlightened Radio and Talking Socialism, which can be heard and seen and discussed every Friday morning on this network, we appreciate our original Dusty-Footed Philosopher and host, Mr. John Case, and his sidekick, J.B. Christensen, and all of our guests, and our sponsors, the Online University and MTV Solar. Thank you. My name's Mike. We will talk with you next week.
All right.
Everybody,
See
take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
All right.